Four, three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Art of Move podcast with myself, Anthony Manuel, my good friend, Dr. William Raybar. We're still out here in the Canadian Rockies trying to find the grand unified theory of human movement and biomechanics. And we are joined today by a guest that I've wanted to have here for a long time since we started this. We have Naudi Aguilar, the founder of Functional Patterns in the fitness industry for over 15 years, coming up with innovative ways to address dysfunctions within the body. And honestly, Naudi doesn't need any introductions. Naudi, you've been the White Whale podcast guest from the beginning for me. So I'm really, really stoked to have you on for this conversation. For people who are just joining, this is a follow-up episode to one of our earlier episodes. We had episode 14 was an in-depth look at the limitations of science in terms of how it's used to address solving biomechanical problems and the problems with, basically just drawing conclusions about how the body moves and how the body works based on throwing around the conclusions and the results that you see in papers. And we did a very, very large kind of in-depth look at the issues with some of the philosophies of science, the limitations of science, how people kind of fall into this mindset of scientism, where they think that the only way to draw conclusions or gather information from the natural world is to draw it from the natural sciences. We talked about some of the biases that come within academic institutions and the limitations of the paradigms that they form. And we're going to go even more in depth because this is a conversation, we had it months and months and months ago. Like I said, that was episode 14, and I think this is episode 67 that we're on now. So over 50 episodes almost later, we're still having the same discussions. And this was really pertinent. We wanted to have Naudi on because this has been kind of a back and forth between, quote, research-based physios discrediting some of the results that Functional Patterns is getting en masse with the multiple clients that they had. So first of all, Naudi, thanks for joining us for this conversation. Will, I know you want to tee us off for a little bit, but just in general, man, like so much respect for you and the work that you do. Really, really stoked to have you here and really, really pumped for this conversation.
I appreciate you guys having me. I saw that episode 14 when you sent it over to me, or I listened to it, and I thought it was fantastic. The way that you and Will got after it was spectacular. And from what I'm hearing, it seems like Will was digging even deeper into the research and whatnot. So I'm really looking forward into what he's found, what he's looking at, because from a very long time ago, I could, I guess I'll maybe get into a little bit into the history. But back in like 2011, 2010, 2011, do you guys remember seeing that post on SureDog.com?
I looked at it. That? Yeah, I was on SureDog daily. So
yeah, I got fucking reamed really bad, and I didn't have anybody defending me on my position at all. And prior to that, I'd seen a strength and conditioning video of a guy named Sean Shirk. He was a UFC fighter from way back in the day, and I was like, I saw how he trained, and I'm like, okay, I get it. It's like you train in relation to different demands that you're going to face in the environment. I'm like, I see what's going on. I had already been doing it, so I was like, okay, I'm going to put this up on YouTube, and then I'm going to post this up on SureDog and say, hey guys, check out the fighter that I'm working with. He's an amateur still, but we're hoping to build up and do some good things with this training that I'm employing. I came in completely naive to how the industry even operated at that point. I mean, I had done little bits of research here and there, but I thought like the progressives were like the normal of our industry. Like when you hear of a Paul Chek or something like that he was kind of like normal. I knew he had done things to some extent that weren't necessarily like that weren't necessarily the most practical, like doing deadlifts and back squats and whatnot, but I knew he was still progressive, and I thought that was the norm. Well, lo and behold, I put up this post, and then I get torn apart, and everybody, I'm just like, whoa, what the hell is going on? Why am I getting annihilated like this? I then end up after that point, I was so shocked by it. I was kind of like, I was completely surprised. I was like, let me start doing some research. Let me look into some of the studies that are out there on what people are concluding, how people think about it. And quite literally, I was like, this industry is still completely in the Stone Ages. Like they're incapable of actually observing phenomenon and making adjustments in relation to that phenomenon. And for me, growing up, that's all I knew. My parents were orchardists. They had like they were migrant workers from Mexico. They came into this country. Eventually, by the time I was about like 5 or 6 years old, they started buying their own land and cultivating the land. Cherries were the fruits that they cultivated, and I got to see all the problems solved, all the problems that they dealt with as it related to trying to create a yield out of their farms. And I saw all the problems that came with it. So all I ever saw, whether it was dealing with irrigation systems, whether it was dealing with with their rental properties, whether it was dealing with the different businesses that they had. All I saw was the practical application of solving problems. I never saw scientific studies. I just saw people solving problems right in front of me, whether it was electrical work, whether it was installing tile, whether that was working on plumbing issues, whether that was working on structural issues, structural damage in a building. That's all I saw growing up. That's all I saw. And so when I started researching the ways that people were arriving at conclusions, and at that time everything was deadlifts and back squats. To even say anything at that time against the deadlifts and back squat was heresy. To say that at that time was like you were going to get torn apart, and that's what exactly happened. Because I think I was probably the only person at that time that said anything about those types of lifts, the only person that actually questioned them, and I get no credit for it because nowadays people aren't doing those lifts anywhere near to the degree that they were back in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, all the way to about like 2014 and 15. And I was shocked. It was like I wasn't expecting that. Fast forward to today, and things have changed. Things have changed greatly. I've seen that there's actual progress in the industry. People are valuing anecdotes, right? They are valuing them because they do matter, and that it is a form of evidence. You know, Galileo, he had anecdotes, and lo and behold, you know, it's like he's etched in scientific history as a pioneer. And so on my end, I guess I feel like I have kind of like we have an independent body of research in functional patterns that could be classified almost like a scientific institute with what we do. Yes, it's a business, but we are a collection that we are getting repeatability all across the world, utilizing the methods that I've culminated over my career and whatnot. But yeah, man, it's been a very interesting experience being in this industry, and I think we're getting to the tail end of. I feel that right at the beginning of when I got started was when people first had real access to the internet, and what's happened now is that people have become exposed to societal corruption, because that's one thing that I've gotten into in my entire career is that, you know, corruption does exist. Anytime that you deal with people at an individual basis, it's going to be different than if you deal with them at a collective basis. And so therefore, if when you get people in groups, that's where you get mob rule. And that is a similar condition that happens in science. I saw it a long time ago. I anticipated that, and I said, you know what? Scientists are humans. They are apt to engage in corrupt behavior if you put them in certain circumstances. And if you look at the history of science, it's been that over and over and over again. Anytime you've had any radical revolutionary challenge them on their positions, there comes a point of being skeptical, but then there also comes a point where you're being tyrannical, and that's what I feel that science has kind of been. They're too skeptical, and it's problematic.
That was an amazing intro.
Yeah.
You know what? Like the fact that we have to even go to that level and say that science has been corrupt in the past or could be corrupted. Different countries have their scientists, you know, government scientists in certain countries, right? There's been times in the history, even within Western society, where groups of scientists were cooperating on things that weren't so looked upon nicely right now. Let's put it that way, right? So there is fallibility in the industry. There's no doubt about it, right? So let's find out where it is fallible and where we can simplify it to see and to teach the regular person kind of how to look at this. Okay, so I have a Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to interject. I because right now what we're going to end up doing is addressing the biopsychosocial model, right? And I want to say I have already been incorporating the biopsychosocial model. Out of the people that actually responded to these controversial physios posts, who sent me DMs in somewhat good faith. The thing is, many of them came in bad faith, and I had to kind of convert them, being very. I've had tens of thousands of engagements with people on social media. I'm sure you guys have seen, even from way back in the day, how many people I would battle with on a minute-to-minute basis, and that would be all day long that I would be doing it. So I've had tens of thousands of engagements that have enabled me to practice to pull somebody into a good faith discussion. And when I draw them into a good faith discussion and I ask them, what is the biopsychosocial model in practice? They begin to explain the steps, and I'm like, I've been doing that since about 2009. I've already been doing it for a very long time. I've been applying it. I've understood when I started reading documents on the stress response, when I started getting into Robert Sapolsky's work really deeply, like at around 2010, I was like, oh, okay. So you're talking about the stress response to some degree or the other, and you're down regulating it to some degree. So a person is not intimidated by the movement. I get what you're getting at. I've been doing it for a while. So I don't understand where the disagreement is. I guess I agree with the biopsychosocial model. I think it's a part of the equation, but to completely abandon the biomechanical notion and say that pain is not biomechanically oriented when literally every single thought that's in our brain, it has some kind of a physical manifestation attached to it. Where we look at body language, for example, like our brain, what we're thinking and processing shows up on our body language. It's impossible to not show it on your body language, and it happens very deep. I think some even body language experts don't really see body language to the depth that you can see it. So when I look at body language, I see it from a much deeper place. There's CIA agents don't just read basic body language cues. They see small millimetric micro expressions that people institute whenever they're lying or whenever they're trying to, whenever they're uncomfortable, they look for those cues. And so the thing is, the brain and the body correspond to one another. So to say that the brain, and never mind that when a person stops worrying, that changes your biomechanics. That changes your movement. When you're relaxed, your mechanics are different than when you're anxious. So I've known about this for a long time intuitively, and I practiced it. So when I say, I'm like, oh, this is all you're doing, I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this forever, bro. Like, this is not what you're talking about is nothing new to me from a practical standpoint. It's like, duh. It's like this is basic behavior, the basic application of behaviorism as it relates to helping somebody rehabilitate their pain. So with that in mind, I don't want to take a big dump on science because I value science, even peer review. Like if I want to say, okay, what are the hormones that are typically associated to anxiety? What are the hormones that are typically associated to depression? I just punch that in on Google, and then I take what they're saying, and I trust the information that's there because peer review is telling me that, hey, yes, anxiety is triggered. It has a lot to do with cortisol, and I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that information is there. If I ask, hey, what area of the brain controls involuntary movement, and then it says that the R complex is what is going to trigger involuntary movement, then I'll be like, oh, it says that. I trust that. If I go on Google and I say, okay, what triggers voluntary movement? And then if it would say, what would it be? The cerebral motor cortex. I believe that's the area that would be getting triggered if you do a voluntary motion. Then I'll go to Google and I will trust that information. So I trust science every single day. It's just there's a difference between hard science and soft science, good science and fucking junk science. And these people are trying to treat the junk science like if it's hard science, and it's not hard science. It's not. It's really not. It's like there's no repeatability in what they're doing. So yeah, so I don't mean to interject too much, but keep going, Will.
Well, no, that's a really important point too, because as we're exploring the limitations of science as it pertains to movement and biomechanics, we're not shitting on science. We're not shitting on the scientific method. What we're doing, and we talked about this in episode 14, we're making a distinction between the scientific method as a method to collect more information to basically come to stronger conclusions from the science, as in like scientific consensus, academia, and a mental model where you can basically take the word of basically a paper out of context without looking deeper into it, and outsourcing your own thinking to the conclusions of papers that professionals are just throwing around. And that's the big difference.
We're actually going to have Mike Musiolo is going to be putting up a video directly addressing peer review and some of the studies that these guys have been citing. And we're also going to be putting forth a Louis Ellery. He's a physiotherapist. He's going to be putting up another one that addresses these points from time to time. So I wanted to just plug that just so people are aware of it. They're going to be really good videos. I think you guys are going to like them too.
Can't wait to see them. Yeah, so this is the chart that I wanted to put up, right? And it's a very simplified version of what science actually is, like actually going from theory to observation to hypothesis to experiment. These are the steps that have to be there in order to conduct an experiment, okay? Everything else added on to that makes the observation stronger and makes the experiment stronger. But these are the steps that have to be there. Now let's take a look at each step, because that'll show how the nuances don't work with a lot of the papers that they claim to debunk you that I've seen. Okay. So the theory, you have to already have models in your head. You have your culture, you have your political influences there. So that already influences your observations. We can take gait, for instance. The academic model of gait is always side view. It's very linear. They don't take into account rotational forces, and it's through the lens of force application. They want to make you faster. So that's the lens it's usually looked upon. However, you can
Which
look
is
at gait
good.
in another.
I mean, which is not necessarily bad. It has its place, and I agree with that. Like we do max sprint tests to at least on a treadmill, on a non-motorized treadmill. We do max sprint tests to see if somebody's velocity has gone up after we've gotten them from starting to ending, and we've gotten people who weren't in pain to increase their speed, at least on a treadmill. When we were working with clients and whatnot. So I don't want to also discount what the things that they're testing. I think they're still relevant, and I'm assuming you guys are coming from that same position, right?
Yeah, I'm not discounting any of that. I'm just saying that the theory that you hold from the models that you have in your head will guide your observations, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so that's what that means there. And then from the observation to the hypothesis, you have to take the variables. You have to find the cause and effect. This is where they really mess up when they're trying to disprove FP, because they're not taking the variables that you claim to have, okay? Which I don't actually know, and we can maybe dig a little bit.
In all
deeper into
fairness,
that.
guys, the main thing that I talked about way back in the day, I was known as the guy that would, everybody at that time was putting hashtag, do you even lift, bro? And I was saying, I put hashtag, do you even rotate, bro? Like, do you even like get outside of the sagittal plane of motion? That was my thing. Do you even contralaterally reciprocate? Do you ipsilaterally reciprocate? It's like, do you perform these functions? Yes or no? Now, look, there's people that talk about whether you should be in a knee valgus, knee varus, whether you should have a flat foot, whether it should be an overly arched foot, high ankle. It's like you have every single, like, is a scapular wing okay? Is it not? Is a forward head okay? Because forward head doesn't indicate that you're going to end up having neck problems or whatever. It's like, I don't make claims on any of those things because there's so many factors that go into predicting a person's pain that you can't just say, hey, you have a forward head, so therefore your neck is going to hurt. I used to make those kinds of mistakes way back in the day until you work with somebody and you're like, wait a minute, your head doesn't hurt? Your neck doesn't hurt? No, my shoulder hurts, but I have a forward head posture. I'm like, okay, well, how are those correlated? Or my hip hurts and I have a forward head. Be like, but your pelvis doesn't seem that bad. What the hell is going on? It's like, it's much stranger than we suppose. And I feel that this entire industry is just suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's very slow. Like, people just operate very, very slow. Like, this is one thing that I've talked about before where I'm like, you have like boxers. There was one guy I got into it with. It was a semi good faith discussion, but it wasn't really good faith because the guy was still pissed off at me. And so I asked him, I'm like, hey, bro, do boxing coaches get boxers to have better mechanics and get more punching output in their craft? And the guy didn't really want to answer it. I'm like, hey, I'm going to repeat the question because there's certain things that you have to do when you're going to trap somebody. And I got him to finally answer the question. I'm like, did they use any force plates for that? Did they use any light sensors for that? Did they use any of these technologies in order to figure that out? Or did they just use their two freaking eyes to figure that out? And then they obviously, at that point, it's like, you know what you're talking about is completely, I get a paragraph. It always is followed up with some kind of a paragraph completely saying that what you're doing is scientifically founded upon. And then I'm left to ask about a few more questions, and then they just stop responding. And I'd simply just say, hey, if boxing coaches, wrestling coaches, jiu-jitsu coaches, track coaches, and all these people are improving technique on athletes with their pure eyes, like Usain Bolt's coach doesn't look like, based upon the videos that I saw, it looks like you were just on some dirt track with very primitive tools. And I could measurably see Usain Bolt's techniques get better and better as time passes. And they're not using fancy equipment. So like, but to go back on the whole thing on what I do, it's like, you can have a theory on motion, a theory of movement, and it could be correct. How do you make it work? That's the part that I'm most concerned about, right? You have A and Z, right? You have point A to point Z. How do you deal with the alphabet in between? That's what functional patterns is. So quite literally, and I'll just tell you guys this much right now, everybody has every theory that's out there. All of it's relevant. Most of it is relevant, believe it or not. Most of it carries its relevance. How do you make it work? And the only way you're going to make it work is if you utilize the system that I put forth, because my system actually puts all the variables together so it can actually apply. So what I my vision has, I get things wrong all the time, just so everybody understands. I don't look at my practice as being perfect. If the second if I go into like grab one of my pulleys, or I grab a few or if I grab a few tools and I start doing work, I would literally I could literally create 30 new things, 40 new things that to most people would be like, holy shit. And I've done it, and people are like, what the fuck? You know, like when I have people live with me and they see me train clients, they'll have a supposition. Anytime somebody's new, they'll have a supposition of as to how I train a client. Oh, this is how Naudi's going to approach it. And then I do it completely different than what they were even imagining. And like I'll create things on the fly, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" And I'm in my mind, I'm just thinking, "That's nice that you're seeing all the good things that seem to be coming with what I'm talking about." Because if you saw what I saw in terms of all the errors that I'm making and all the variables that I'm not accounting for, you might go crazy. Because what I account for is very little, and what there is to account for is a lot. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that I don't know. So that's why when I see people that are so apt to talk about core bracing, whether we should be an anterior, posterior pelvic tilt, whether we should flex our spine when we lift, or whether we should extend our spine, I'm just kind of like, the subject matter is. If I address in one session, if I address the entirety of in one session in an hour, if I address the entirety of the theories that are brought up on biomechanics in 1 hour, then that tells you to the degree of how slow this system operates. So I don't like to participate. I operate at a certain pace, and it's like the pace that I operate in is hard to understand. I brought people that are very scientifically minded around me, and that were like, that had a traditional background, that had masters and like bachelors in like exercise science, rehab, things of that nature. And they have a supposition that I'm very mathematical by how I do things, but I'm not. I'm a Mexican, and Mexicans are very good. Mexicans are very good at building houses. We're very good at building things, and you know how we do it? That seems about right. Let me just put this here. If I don't brace that thing there, then that area right there might begin to fall, and that could be problematic. So that's how I've looked at it. It's very intuitive how I go about it. But by what I mean by intuitive is that my brain processes data in a similar way to a dog fetching a ball when it jumps in the air, and it's like it's processing information. The complexity of that data is far beyond the grasp of what our forebrain can even calculate. And so on my end, when I think about when I think about the debates and when people ask me like, Naudi, what do you do? I can't really put it into words, because words themselves, it's like, let me put it this way. The second I try explaining what I'm doing, Anthony and Will, the second I try explaining it is like I've literally lost 50% of the idea by opening my fucking mouth and speaking. I've already lost it. So that's why what I've done, I've tried to explain this, and I've done this. I made the mistake of doing this too long, trying to explain everything that I was doing, and then it impeded my potential to keep researching effectively. And so what I've done over the last 3 years is that I kind of just told my community, everybody around it, where I'm like, don't infect my research with your findings. Don't talk to me. I don't want to fucking hear it, because the second you infect me with it, now I can't get what you said out of my head. And now the only thing that I can see are the things that you're telling me to look at, and the things that you're looking at might be relevant, but they're probably not relevant, and they're too reductionistic in order for me to actually look at it. So quite literally, over the last 3 years, I've kind of been off in no man's land trying to investigate mechanics, because the second I try and explain specific phenomenon, I'm like, fuck. Anytime I try and encapsulate it in words, it becomes a problem. At some point I do. And quite literally, I'll be honest to you guys, I don't actually put what I'm learning into words until I do an HBS course. I don't even do it. I don't even try explaining it. So quite literally, the first time that I run an HBS course is when I'm explaining my positions, what I've learned up until that point. Prior to that, I don't put it into words. And to actually do it is like, that's another, to try and put it into words is beyond it's beyond language in many regards. It's beyond quantification at this point, because we don't have the tools to truly measure what the fuck is going on inside of the body. We don't fully know how fascia even works inside the body. We have tension dynamics, and then I believe we also, and you guys could, I don't know, you have pressure dynamics that are inside of the body. I don't really know how it works. I don't really know how muscles work. To take it a step further, and before I have you guys kind of interject, when people look at muscle imbalance, it's not really muscle imbalance. What we have is bone malformations that work around, and muscles that work around bone malformations. what people in this industry fail to recognize is that we're degenerated. We've consumed grains, we've consumed polyunsaturated fats, we've had wars, we've had famines, we've had plagues, we have had all this shit that has made, and then on top of that, we've had sedentarism, we've had farming. Farming, it has pattern overloads or repetitive patterns in farming that you're going to find that are going to be damaging to the body. We've done so much to damage ourselves compared to what we were at our peak when we were in Africa. And when I look at human beings, what I'm looking at are essentially walking, talking distortions. You can't correct muscle imbalance until you actually reform bone. And in order to reform bone, then that means that you have to potentiate muscles all the way down to the periosteum level when you're going to make a biomechanical change. And this is what I suspect that I've been doing. I saw this a long time ago, and I'm like, anytime I would do a corrective procedure, anytime I would try and correct something, I'd do a stretch. I'm like, yes, this is fine. Yes, this is reducing a person's pain. Anytime that I would use a biopsychosocial model intervention by simply just talking to the person and telling them, hey, man, like this is kind of mental and you need to chill the hell out. You're like, I'm taking you to a basic range of motion. You need to relax. It's fine. Your knee can move that way. It's fine. Like anytime I've done that, I'm like, yes, that's great. I help the person solve the pain either biomechanically or mentally. The question then therein lies, there's always been something missing. And the missing link has been, how do I reform bone? Because that person does not look like an athlete. If I want the average Joe to operate like an athlete, then they have to look like an athlete, and they need to have the actual physical framework of a Bo Jackson or a Barry Sanders or a Michael Jordan. Like we don't have that framework. So even when people talk about muscle balance, because at some point we're going to probably get into this discussion about muscle balance, people don't even know how far that goes. Like if you're a pitcher and your humerus is twisted, good luck trying to stretch your way out of that situation. Good luck trying to position your body in a certain way to get you out of that position. The only way you untwist the humerus is if you actually potentiate the musculature through a kinetic chain to untwist the humerus. And to find that kind of coordination, it's so fucking difficult. It's so difficult. And so this is what I mean with the industry operating from the Dunning-Kruger effect. They think that they're doing a lot more than what they are. And I suffered from the Dunning-Kruger effect for quite some time until I kept supposedly correcting people's postures and then seeing them default right back to moving like shit and having their pain come back after working with them for 2 years. It's hard for these guys to recognize like what it means, what long-term results mean, because they don't even know how to retain clientele. Like I am a retention master. You guys know how many HBS2s and HBS3s I have? How many HBS1s I have? That's retention. I know how to retain people because I put forth value. So when you can retain an individual and you can train them, guess what happens after 2 years and you implemented the same intervention over and over again? The benefit wears off. And what do you do when it wears off? Do you just refer out or do you make an adjustment? Sometimes I would refer out, and guess what happened? They would refer out. They would do okay for about 3 months until the intervention of that other practitioner stopped working. And guess what? They would be like, hey, Naudi, you kind of have to figure this out, bud, because I got to go to work. And if I can't go to work, I can't pay my bills. And I have like massive amounts of debt, Naudi. You know, like these are successful people. And they're like, I have massive amounts of debt. And if I don't show up to my job as an engineer or as an auto mechanic, I'm going to go bankrupt. And that's not going to go well. So in essence, I have to hire you to try and solve my problem because I've already done all the traditional therapies. I don't want to get into that. I've already done the yoga. I've already done all this shit. And now I need you to solve my problems. Those are the pressures that have brought me to realize that I was operating in the Dunning-Kruger effect. But it's hard for people to get that experience when they can't even retain somebody for more than 2, 3 months, 4 months. If you can't retain a client for an extended period of time, it's going to be very difficult for you to even understand what I'm talking about. And physical therapists, for how long do physical therapists, if I'm going to ask you this, William or Anthony, if you guys know, how long do physical therapists typically work with people for?
Oh, it could vary anywhere from, a day to a year, right? Or
most of the time, it's 10 sessions. From what I've talked to, because you have many physical therapists that are in FB, most of the time it's like 10 sessions. And if it has been for a year, then usually that's what I end up asking a physical therapist. If you're suggesting that you do what I already do, or that what I do is ineffective, I want to see your results. I want to see that you've actually gone through the rigors that I've had to in order to come to the findings that I have about the human body. Let me see your results if you work with somebody for a year. It's like I said, bro, it's hard for me to put this into words, guys. It's very difficult to put into words because quite literally, There's so many people in this field that talk a big fucking game, and it's very easy to sound very certain of yourself when you show somebody a technique and then you run away and then you leave the person off to do their own thing. But when you've had to work with somebody and then you hit that wall of your understanding and then the person's still in pain, and then you have to find a new way to help them solve that pain. That's not in any textbooks. That's not in any educational curriculum. That's when you really begin to find out what you're about in this. And this is what I push FP practitioners to deal with. I put them through these circumstances, which are fucking horrifying. There's nothing worse than being in front of a client and then being like, so you're in pain and I don't know how to fix this. How do I explain myself? How do I convince you to continue to keep going down this path with me so I can help you troubleshoot your mechanics? It's a very uncomfortable thing. And I don't think most of these people know this, bro. I don't think that most scientists know this because it's experiential. You only know it. Brett Contreras learned it. Brett Contreras, he challenged me to a debate. He learned it. Brett Contreras back in 2015 challenged me to a debate. And he said that what I was talking about was scientifically unfounded upon. I then said, okay, about 3-4 years after that, I'm like, okay, Brett, let's have a comparative analysis between your method and my method. We'll test it on 50-year-olds. Let's test it on 50-year-olds and see how it does. You use your hip thrust or whatever it is that you do, and I'll use my method, and we'll see which athletes are the ones that end up being the ones that perform the best. Let's go ahead and run a comparative analysis. After that initial statement, to anybody who's watched that debate, look at the debate. This is a PhD, right? He said that what I was doing was scientifically unfounded upon. I bring up the challenge, and I say, let's put our balls on the table. After my initial statements, Brett Contreras makes a concession speech about how science is not fully reliable. I'm just like, I was shocked. I came with a gauntlet of information that was going to completely destroy his outdated notions that he realized later on down the line as he trained more people after he graduated and he started working with people. He's like, wait a minute, this is way more complicated than what I thought. This guy was actually way ahead of me. And he came with nothing but respect. And here we are. Right now, I'm getting massive amounts of disrespect from other people with credentials who just, they haven't been slapped in the face by life well enough yet. And until you've been slapped in the face by life, it's very difficult to understand the perspectives that I'm talking about. Sorry, bro. That's a big, long rant. I tend to do that.
There are so many points
do you have anything to summarize on that?
Yes, 100%. I mean, there was this idea that kind of came forward about an intuitive approach based on the practical application of information and observation. And that was, I took a personal training certification. This is like 10 years ago. I took a personal training certification, but I started training people because I had lost 100 pounds. And I started, working out in the gym, and I started to get myself results, and I had this experiential thing. And what I noticed is that depending on the problem that my client had or their inability to do particular exercises, even in conventional weightlifting training and stuff, you have to think of stuff on the fly based on what you're observing in their body. And your subconscious mind can process information so much faster than your rational thinking mind necessarily can. What happens when you're talking about how you operate at a certain speed, and the thing that kind of came up for me was the speed of trying to take data and information based on papers and trying to apply it to specific contexts. You almost have to imagine the context that it would be relevant in. But the reality is you have a specific context in front of you right now experientially. I said this on a recent podcast where we're talking about concepts about movement, but movement is not conceptual. Someone in the chat here, they mentioned Ido Portal, who said that information is toxic as it pertains to movement specifically. The experiential reality of movement and the experiential reality of the context that you're going to be in with another person, you're processing information much faster and creating specific contexts that are going to be very, very hard to address if you're just relying on, well, this paper said this, so this is the truth. So I'm going to start to hyperimpose this model of what I believe reality is of movement onto my context, rather than letting the context of the reality kind of shape your model. And that's kind of
now,
really.
Keep this in mind. There is a mathematical model to this. Like there's positions that we like if I work with wrestlers for a while. If you work with wrestlers, you're going to tend to find that there's like probably a set of about 25 positions they're going to fall into, and they're going to make transitions between these 25 positions at some point or the other. Some of them dominate with certain positions more than the others. I believe that movement can be, when you say it can't be conceptual, what do you mean that it can't be conceptual?
Well, I just mean the actual experience. It's sort of the map is not the territory. The finger pointing at the moon isn't the moon itself. The ideas about movement are not movement itself. It's maybe a little, philosophical, because the description of the movement is not the movement itself. The description covers angles and aspects and variables of the movement, but it's not the totality of the movement itself.
I agree with that fully, but then in the same token, some maps are better than other maps, right?
Yes.
And that's so in that sense, you want to. The idea is constantly revising the map to make sure that it does represent the territory a little bit more effectively, and that's what I always focus on.
Well, and here when we're talking about the theory in terms of the models, the cultural, political, that's 100% what you were getting to, kind of, right? I think he's frozen. Maybe. Will?
Yeah, no, definitely. And okay. I wanted to talk about I've heard you say that you wanted to make does that mean through your own institution?
I can't really hear you.
Hold on.
Repeat it again, brother?
Prove the cause and effect. How would you take variables? Because this.
Yeah, Will, you're gonna have to repeat that just because your internet cut out there for a second. You there?
I think we lost him.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
No? Oh, damn it.
Yeah. Check one. Sorry, okay. Will.
Am I back in?
You're back in, yeah. You're back.
Yeah, okay. Sweet. Okay, I was saying I've heard you say actually that you want FP to be validated, through scientific rigor. And it could be through your own institution.
He's cutting out again. But
how do you expect to go through that process? And how could you take the cause and effect of the variables?
Here, I'm gonna
got the point there.
So Will's completely cutting out, but I know the question. I know the question that he's going to ask. Yeah.
How do you address the context of so many different variables with functional patterns? If I change your viscoelastic properties, then I'm going to change essentially the source code for how you behave altogether. That's essentially it. So there's a source code to how you move in space, and what I'm essentially doing is I'm going to if everybody has a viscoelastic, yeah, I'll give you an example of this. Should we wait till Will gets back so he can respond?
I'll recap when he comes back. He might be.
I'm gonna have to hook up my charger, bro, because it's actually my phone's getting closer to dead than it is alive. So let me go ahead and hook this guy in.
And Will and I talked about this. I think the real question is, he was saying it's like, okay, well, I know Naudi wants to validate FP through scientific rigor. The issue is that most science right now, as it pertains to the people solving biomechanical problems, are looking at specific variables specific to their models. So when you're looking at validating some of the principles of FP, what are the variables that you're going to be looking to test, and how are you going to create a proof of concept through testing specific variables?
That's a good question. I guess running speed would probably be one of them. Checking how improvements in a person's vertical leap. It would pretty much just be, okay, did somebody become more athletic utilizing these protocols? That would probably be it. I would want to actually also test it on an older group of people as well, because most of the studies that you look at as it relates to developing athletic performance, most of the time are done on people who are young and who are already more physically resilient to dysfunctional stimuli. And what I would want to do is actually display how we could actually take people who are in their 50s and 60s and make them more athletic. How we could actually get them. At some point, I'd want to look at their genes. I want to see if we're triggering any epigenetic effects on them. I want to see if we actually potentially lengthen telomeres. It's quite literally, I just want to get the craft figured out. I mean, mental health. How do you quantify mental health is a question, but FP has helped many people with mental problems. People with drug addiction is like a pretty common one. People who are dealing with drug addictions, addictive behaviors in general. It's kind of like I just want to develop the system, create harmony in the body, make it change the viscoelastic consistency of the body. And then after that, people can decipher how many things this is going to apply to, because I don't think that there's not going to be anything it doesn't apply to when it's all said and done. You're essentially talking about structuring the body to either behave functionally or dysfunctionally our society seems to structure it to become dysfunctional. And what I mean by function, you guys know what I mean by functionality, right?
Well, what is your definition of functionality as it pertains to your particular system? Because we,
to make something work with minimal waste. So like an internal combustion engine works, but it has this byproduct of CO2 or carbon monoxide, which it dumps into the environment. So on my end, I'm thinking, okay, how do we solve for the negative externalities that are associated with my working system? So the whole idea is, does a bicep curl work? Yes. How you do the bicep curl matters, and you make it more functional by optimizing it in relation to a specific. You have to optimize it in relation to a specific situation, but even specific to the anatomy of a human organism and why we even developed the bicep to begin with. So really, to be functional is really to just minimize waste, to account for negative externalities. That's what I mean by functionality, and I believe that that's really the actual definition of truly making something more functional, is to minimize waste. And people have tried to make it out. It's taken me quite some time to come up with that definition, and when you begin to employ the protocols that I do and you do them well, it's really hard to fucking argue with that position at a certain point, because there is a wasteful way of moving and there's an efficient way of moving. And what I'm doing is, what I'm moving us towards is a direction of moving without having too many byproducts of inefficiency.
Yeah, sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No.
I don't know if it answers the question or not. If you guys can prod me even deeper too. I don't mind. If you guys want to keep digging at me, I don't give a fuck. I deal with difficult circumstances every day, man. I have to face a difficult life, and so on my end, I have no problems. If you guys have deeper questions, you need to ask.
So I will. I'm going to summarize for Will a little bit. I asked specifically what variables would be tested for validating FP scientifically, and the idea of measuring athletic performance as it relates to maybe a sprint time or a vertical jump, specifically in older populations, so that younger populations that would make these positive adaptations regardless. Realistically, you can throw anything at a youthful population, but like maybe an older population, 50 and above, that has a harder time adapting, would be a better use. So in terms of designing
that variable right there, that variable would make every personal trainer, every single strength and conditioning coach, and every therapist shit their pants, because they're like, we got to get people who are already probably broken in many different regards, and then we have to fix them and then get them to move better. And I want to actually mention this: every single exercise system has a rate of injury, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not FP. We have a negative injury rate. That's the thing with FP. We have a negative rate of return, and we make people do some crazier shit with their body that they could never think that they would be able to do. And we have a negative rate of injury. So we don't injure people. I saw Ido, and speaking on Ido Portal, because I'm not a fan. As you guys probably know, I'm not a fan of Ido Portal. And the reason I say that I'm not a fan is because he justifies a lot of stupid shit. And namely, I saw him talking on the Andrew Huberman podcast. My research team brought it to my attention that he was saying that if I don't push you to an injury, then I'm not really doing my job.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that. I'm like, really? There's no way of intelligently progressing somebody to a backflip without hurting their body. That just sounds like a justification because you're not able to account for enough variables. That's what it sounds like to me. That's what I'm going to take it as. And I think that that's bullshit. I think at some point you have to just say, you know what? I'm not accounting for much. And this is why I become politicized, Anthony, as you mentioned before, that, I have a political outlook on things. Capitalism doesn't necessarily. I'm a capitalist. I've succeeded in capitalism. I'm succeeding in capitalism, and I will continue to succeed as a capitalist because I'm an adaptive organism. But capitalism doesn't afford us the opportunity to literally change our position very much, because capitalism rewards those who have foresight instead of those who have hindsight. So Warren Buffett is very, very financially successful. For what reason? Because he has foresight. That's why he has made loads of money. He's able to predict the future. Anybody who's made wise investments has happened to do that. Anybody who starts a company that can help with problems in the future is the company that ends up succeeding in the end. And so, as I see it, unless you have good foresight, it's very difficult to make it in capitalism. And what I think I did differently than other people in this industry is I didn't come into this industry thinking that I was a specialist because I had some certification or because there was a governing body that told me that I was certified or that I was good. I came into this industry knowing that I'm an idiot and that I'm not very smart and there's so much to learn, and that I'm like I can learn one thing at a time, whereas reality operates at probably, trillions of bits of information per second, and I'm only able to process maybe like a few bits of information per second. So I came into it with this humility, and always telling people when I run my courses, like, hey, take what I say with a grain of salt because it's going to change. And I've told people that from the very beginning, and I tell them that today. It's like, don't take what I say as fact. And I do that, and then people still want to take what I say like as if I was saying something in matters of fact instead of saying things in relation to context. And so, what put me on this subject matter, guys? What was it?
The variable.
Testing for variables.
Yeah.
Yes. So going back to testing for variables, it's really, I want to just perfect the practice. And then at that point, any scientist who wants to step up and test any variables with it, they're going to notice a difference. Because if you account for mechanotransduction at a fundamental level, you're talking to the nuclear genes directly. And if you give the nuclear genes new information through your myofascial network, through your microtubules directly into your nuclear genes, then at that point you're signaling new ways that we are going to express ourselves genetically. So at that point, it's not of interest to, I don't care to test myself scientifically because I've already seen the benefits. You guys have already seen the results. And I mean, obviously people that are on the other side that stand to lose money by me succeeding, they're going to come up with every excuse in the book to try and deny them. But there's going to come a point where the results are going to get so good, and they're already getting to that point. If you guys look at the most recent ones from the recent HBS courses, they're going to get way fucking better. So it's already too late. Cat's out of the bag. All right. I've already certified enough people, and I've given them such good principles that they're going to be able to solve problems. So you can sit here and shoot it down all you want, but if I see it working right in front of my eyes and I see the output because I understand how to process information in an applied context, when you put it into a scientific format, it's going to be an automatic that some kind of a change is being categorized. Never mind that. How many longitudinal studies happen to exist in this industry? When you look at rehab, when you look at performance training, how many longitudinal studies are there?
Not that many, and the variables are pretty poor. So,
but let's forget about the variables. How many longitudinal studies are there, William?
I can't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, well, there's not many, right? You could probably, as it relates to the fitness industry, they're not testing long term, from my understanding. So at the end of the day, we are not going to know what functional patterns does until 30, 40 years from now. I'm aiming for 30, 40 years from now. I defer gratification. I'm a master of it. This is what I do. I stopped training and I gave up my vanity so I could defer gratification so I could think about getting a reward in the long term. So yeah, I mean, we could conduct all sorts of studies that validate my biases all we want, but we're not really going to know until 40 years from now. When you see one group of people that are applying what I'm talking about, and then another group of people who are choosing not to, and one looks very healthy and regenerative, and then the other one doesn't look very healthy and is degenerative, at some point, it's going to be so evident, just like, the difference between riding a donkey or riding a Tesla, is going to be that evident that you don't really need to conduct a study anymore. It's just going to be freaking obvious over time. And that's really what my job is to make it so fucking undeniable, to literally be the Michael Jordan of my field, so that therefore at that point it leaves nobody a single excuse to say anything. You won't even need a scientific study to pretty much validate what I'm talking about. In the next 20, 30 years, that's going to be my prediction. And what I see and what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing is not lying to me from what I can tell.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm going to say,
please do.
First off, my question is, before I play devil's advocate, has anyone approached you to do a study yet?
Fuck no, bro. I have made so many public challenges. I have made so many public challenges where I've literally said, when I've made memes where it's like, this is a very good meme that I made a while back. And I went on Google and I typed in testicle shrinkage, and then I took an image of that, and then I put on there, I'm like, what quote unquote scientists do whenever I challenge them to put me in a scientific study and test what I'm putting forth. Their testicles shrink. They want none of this as it relates to testing it. So have I approached people about doing it? Yes. I literally went with Brett Contreras on our debate, and I challenged him to actually conducting a test on there. I'm not going to do it now. You know why? Why do people even conduct scientific studies to begin with, William? Why do people do it most of the time? Let's get political for a minute.
To validate their bias already.
For what? And for what purpose? For what purpose?
The field they're working in, they probably want to
make money,
yeah, well,
increase their notoriety,
Get the grants.
secure
Some
their
people are like that,
survival,
right?
secure their position in society. Perhaps that's why they want to do what they do. Let's just get straight to the fucking point, because that's what I do, bro. They're trying to secure a position in society. They're trying to secure a position within the tribe. That's what they're trying to do. I've secured my position in the tribe. People are trying it. I don't need science at this point. People are trying it, and they're like, you know what? I've gone to physical therapy. I've done all this stuff. And the reason that I'm going to the FP facility is because I tried everything, and my friend's pain is gone. Now I'm going to go to this facility and try the same thing. Oh, my pain is gone. It's completely gone. And now I don't really need to think about going to a physical therapist. And now I no longer need surgery. I don't need to even think about surgery. So that's why people end up like, that's why FP is going. So fundamentally, I don't need science right now. What I would like is to give my practitioners that I've taught these principles more time to refine the method. So in about 5-10 years, we do conduct studies. So then at that point, we can really solidify this. We knock it out of the ballpark. We already will knock it out of the ballpark. But I want to make this so undeniable. I want to make it to where it's like, hey, look, bro, if you look at this, it's going to be the equivalent of a person still believing that Santa Claus exists or that unicorns exist, right? If you still believe in that obsolete method, that's how obvious I want to make it. Did Michael Jordan get to where he was at by kind of being like, yeah, let me leave room for a discussion about who's the best of all time? Or did he say, no, I'm going to like cement this in people's head? That's how I see it for myself. I don't want to give anybody any excuse to say shit. There's still going to be haters. There's still going to, because capitalism makes people deny Elon Musk, right? That's quite literally it. If you see people are crazy enough to say that Elon Musk is full of shit. And I'm like, dude, shut up. When I was growing up, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm 38 years old. I'm pushing on 39. And I'm like, okay, when I was growing up, I remember hating the fossil fuel industry and blaming the fossil fuel industry for most of our problems and the fact that we were in Iraq because of the fossil fuel industry. It fucking pissed me off. Then all of a sudden, one dude named Elon Musk grabs his fucking balls and he says, you know what? I'm going to address this problem right now. I'm going to address this and I'm going to grab my balls. And he didn't get assassinated when he did it. It's the most inspiring story of my fucking lifetime. After he pulls that off, what do you have? Millions of haters, millions of them that want to tear him down. You can't win in this world. So at the end of the day, I'm going to cement my position as well as I can, but I can't convince everybody. But bro, if I can convince 10% of the smartest people on the planet to buy into what we do, then guess what? That changes the entire world. So I don't need to convince everybody. You don't have to convince everybody. And not everybody has to buy into peer review. Not everybody. Is there any peer review data to suggest that a Tesla is better than a traditional car? Is there any peer reviewed evidence?
I can find them. I guarantee it.
I would imagine you maybe have to go into metrics. But if you went into an internal combustion engine car and then you went into a Tesla, you wouldn't need a scientific study to determine that the Tesla is way fucking better. Until you get into one, you can't know. That's really what it is. And until you get into FP, you can't really know either.
The issue is going mainstream, right? Like if you want to go mainstream, it's very profitable.
Oh, you think so? William, I'm going to shoot you down. That's a great position that you have. You ever hear of this program called P90X? You ever hear of it?
I have.
You ever hear of this one company called CrossFit? Have you guys ever heard of CrossFit before? Absolutely. You guys ever hear of Orange Theory or F45 training? You guys ever hear of these companies? Have you guys ever heard of them by any chance?
Of course.
What science did P90X have to solidify its claim on the market?
That's an interesting point that you're making right now, because you seem to be held to a different standard. And from my view, I'm like, why doesn't Naudi just cut a wood chop? Everybody loves the wood chop. What's his name? Gray Cook made it famous. I'm like, why doesn't Naudi just say his para bar is a wood chop and with motion in it? And then there's your scientific validation right there, right? Like
bro, that's so.
I'm saying that's how it's done now for the most part.
I know, but let me put it this way, bro. Look, guys, people aren't that stupid. People aren't dumb. They're not stupid. They act stupid. That's the difference, right? I know I'm politicized. I know people are politicized, but the thing is, people are not dumb. You act dumb, and then effectively you become dumb because you act dumb. But if you stop acting stupid and you get to work and you really actually begin to when you are inclined to want to look at your problems and confront them, you become intelligent. I believe that that's the byproduct of the intelligence is the byproduct of taking accountability for your shitty behaviors. That's what I believe it is. And so people act dumb, and that's why they become dumb. So quite literally, if I present somebody a solution for a problem, they're going to be able to tell to some extent or the other whether it works or not, whether it works long term. This is a thing. P90X worked for a while. CrossFit worked for a while as business models. Why are you not seeing new systems really popping up and exploding like CrossFit anymore? Because those systems injured so many people. Why is yoga losing steam? Because it's hurting people, because it's not solving problems. Everything is funneling to FP. And why is everything funneling to FP? Because all the other shit failed. So that's the whole idea. I saw into the future, guys. I saw what people were doing, and I did an analysis, right? I did a cost benefit analysis. And then I said, you know what, like just like a financial advisor. And I said, okay, look, you guys are all going to go bankrupt in about 10 to 15 years. And here we are in 2022, and people are fucking going bankrupt. And now they're forced to have to implement FP protocols, because if they keep doing everything else, it's going to keep failing. And right now they're hoping that it's a placebo thing. The biopsychosocialists are hoping that it's going to be a placebo thing, but that's not going to work. In about 2 years, you may get benefit from that for about a year or two. Then eventually the effects are going to wear off. You're going to shift your asymmetry so far to the point where you're going to hurt your body. Or I'm wrong. But up until this point, I've been predicting the future in many regards. I get it wrong. But I don't get it critically wrong. And never mind that. What I get wrong, you guys don't even know what I get wrong, unfortunately, because I don't even share it, because that's part of my intellectual property. So that's just, I played the game fucking well. And we won't need studies in the future. But yeah, go ahead.
Quick question about the FP method in terms of, one of the things that really stood out to me is talking about how variable the contexts are of solving people's problems, right? And because there are so many different, you're talking about, oh, this person has a head tilt and their hips hurt, so why the fuck is that happening? Is FP, does it have a model of optimal movement and does it have like a step-by-step approach, or is it more of a framework of how you would investigate the context and investigate the problems in order to create novel solutions for the specific context?
I'm simply, my job is to point people in a direction, and then it's the guys that are like you guys that are a lot smarter than me to be able to take the information and then put it into code. That's the idea. To say that there's a biomechanical model for all human beings, not everybody has the same torso length, not everybody has the same arm length, not everybody has the same level size cranium. Do I think it all homogenizes to the same place? Yes, I do. I think Da Vinci had that right, the Vitruvian Man. I believe there are dimensions to a perfect human body that moves in all four dimensions. And so with that in mind, do I have a step-by-step approach on how I do things? To some extent, so people can understand it, but the idea is that you need to be adaptive to stimuli as it's presented in front of you. And in order for you to see that, you have to, like, if you look at, let's say, somebody who's really attractive, who's really beautiful, do you need somebody else to, like an independent party, to tell you that somebody's attractive, or can people uniformly tell you that that person's attractive? Yes or no?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right. So with that in mind, that means that your brain is already programmed to look at geometry in a certain way. You can kind of tell when something looks good and when something doesn't look so good. And what I teach people how to do is to tune into that intuition. I'm like, you see what that looks like, guys? I'm not going to point at all the triangles that just formed there. I'm not going to point at them. Those diamonds and those triangles, I'm not going to point at them. I want you to just look at it in all its fucking glory and look at all the tension that's being created when I form those triangles on the body. Just look at it. And then everybody looks at it and they're like, huh. I'm like, does that look right to you? And they're like, yeah, it does look right. What the fuck? That does look correct. I'm like, yeah, you already have this in you, you fucks. It's already inside of you. It's in your fucking genetics to be able to see these fucking points of geometry. I don't need to put it on a fucking piece of paper. It's encoded already in you, bro. You don't need to worry. Like, men and women both have it. And that's how we've gotten to where we're at right now. Sexual selection was highly built on these points of geometry, right? It's why we've gone after certain archetypes of types of people. It's why animals all look beautiful, because they have certain geometric configurations that are triangular in some capacity. And we are automatically, our limbic brain and our reptilian brain are probably already cueing us to select for those tendencies. It's like we are structured to begin with. And all I do is I just say, hey, look at this. Like a machine elf. I'm like, look at this. Here's this next one. Look at this. and I run people through an HBS course, or I have my people run HBS courses for me. And then the next thing you know, everybody sees it, but they just can't seem to put it fully into words. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
So again, devil's advocate here. I go, Naudi, we have thousands of years of scientific studies built up and collected data, and you're just going to go and shit on that and do your own thing. And not participate in
I'm not shitting on any of it. What are you talking about?
I'm just saying that, by not participating in the scientific rigor, being the mainstream.
I am participating. I am completely participating in it. Structural integrity. I didn't come up with the term structural integrity. I didn't come up with the term tensegrity. I didn't come up with the term allostasis. I didn't come up with any of this shit. I'm literally just engaging in independent research. Fucking
yeah.
Look, man, I'm going to tell you something else that's a little bit political. I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit political.
Sure.
Many of the individuals that come from this community would shit on me saying that, Naudi, what you're saying is scientifically unfounded upon. And guess what they have on their Instagram? Philippians 2:17. Oh, believer in Christ. And I'm like, so you believe, because you're a Christian, that Christ is going to come back and resurrect from the dead. And I don't mean to offend you guys or anything like that if you guys happen to be Christian, but I'm simply going to say, if you're going to call yourself scientific, there is no evidence that Jesus Christ even existed. None. And if he did, he didn't do any of the shit that he fucking did. There is no evidence of it. And yet you're going to claim that I am, and I don't believe in any of it. I don't even think Jesus, I believe, if you guys ask me my honest opinion, I believe Jesus was an old school David Blaine of his era, and that he was quite literally just a magician that was just showing people magic tricks. But then he's like, you know what? I'm gonna be a cult leader at the same time while I show you these fucking magic tricks. That's what I believe Jesus Christ was. He was a magician. If he did exist. So hold on, let me finish that out. The people who believe that they're being scientific aren't even scientific all the way around. I live science every second of the fucking day. I've relinquished myself from my free will completely, and I can't show you guys what I have in my living room because it's proprietary. But if I showed you how I live my fucking life, bro, I live like a stone cold fucking mechanist with everything that I do. Everything that I buy has a functional purpose. I don't buy anything just because it has style or whatever. Everything has a functional purpose to it. So quite literally, I live in accordance to scientific principles every fucking day. I've rarely ever met a scientist because they all have their biases, right? They'll be like, hey, look, I'm a scientist, but now look, I'm a hopeless romantic. Shut the fuck up, dude.
So
it's like
hold
you're
on.
an animal.
I do want to ask you about that because, everything that you own has a functional purpose, but I also know you're a musician. I also know that you have an aesthetic appreciation of the human body.
Sound waves don't have implications on our biology.
But no, this is what I'm saying is what's your take on beauty as part of functionality, as part of, the appreciation for aesthetics, appreciation for nature, appreciation of beauty in general. Is there a functional purpose to beauty? I think you may have hit mute on yourself there. Just double check to see if your mic is unmuted. Shoot. Test. Check one. Can you hear me? I think we may have lost him.
Okay, I just coincidentally left quickly myself, but
I can see you, Naudi, but I can't hear you. You might have to either just double check to see if your mic is still turned on. There's a settings. Oh, he signed out. He might come back, but I mean, Will, he'll probably sign back in a second. Do you think there's a functionality to beauty?
Oh, absolutely. It depends on what function actually means, right? You've noticed really good looking people have easier time in life, right? So that in itself is a function. In terms of within, no, not really, but it guides how your life.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
You're here. Yeah, you're back.
I'm back. All
right. So we're talking about the functionality of beauty as it pertains to anything.
Okay.
Really.
So Anthony, is music structured? Do you need, in order to have good music that resonates with the human being, does it have to be structured?
Of course.
By the way, I rarely ever play guitar anymore. I relinquished my connection to music. I don't really do it anymore because I don't really care. Unless it's going to help me regenerate, I'm not going to bother doing it. Producing music is extremely dysfunctional. It really fucks your body up, and it doesn't leave you in a particularly good place at a physiological level. So I don't really do it. But music has functional capacity to it. Artwork has some functional capacity to it. Music does, and I like music because it has a the timing component associated to it. I'm not big into the visual arts, although I thought Escher was pretty cool. I believe artistry is just simply there to make the medicine go down a little bit better. That's what it's supposed to do, right? You're supposed to implant relevance into a message, and artwork is what makes the medicine goes down. The relevance is the medicine, and the artwork is the sugar that makes it go down. If that makes sense.
It's interesting too, because I find that even building structures that are overly utilitarian, that are basically only serving the purpose of being a building, compared to, say, the architecture of Europe, where there's an artistry to the architecture as well. And I don't want to get too abstract, but there's a different feel. There's a different implication in terms of the human experience.
I agree.
Beauty.
I agree. When you're a dysfunctional organism, you're going to apt to find beauty in things that aren't very functional. And when you're functional, you might say, well, that's kind of arbitrary. So when I go there, I'm like, all that shit's fucking arbitrary. I don't care. I'm telling you, bro. So when you talk about science, I live it, bro. I don't give a shit. I'm willing to relinquish myself from my attachments to my artificialities in order to get to a better world. That's the whole thing. Most people are not willing to do that. Most people are just simply saying, like, you know why Western society and why the U.S. and why Western society prospers, especially the U.S. Why does it lead in innovation? Why do you think? I'm going to get a little bit political again. It's going to offend some people, but I don't care. I'm just simply saying. This is why I don't do podcasts, by the way, because it's hard for me. I'm an open book. I don't hide anything. This is right. You guys can see it.
It's no filter network. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, is if I don't filter myself too much, I'm going to piss too many people off, and then they're going to want to fucking get my attention by saying that I'm some kind of a piece of shit or whatever, and I don't want to deal with it. But why does Western society succeed, and why do other societies not? What's the main variable? What do you think? What do you think I'm thinking?
Infrastructure, education,
tradition.
Life is easier. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Tradition. Okay. Tradition is the reason that America has the least amount of traditions, because it's one of the newest countries on the planet, and it's not very traditional. We don't have very much culture in America, and that's precisely why we succeed as well as we do. I don't want to speak too much on that, because if I dig deeper, I studied people, bro. I was more into behavioral science before I was ever into exercise. People have always fascinated me. And so for me, I always ask myself the question, why do people succeed and why do people fail? And to take it a step further, why do societies succeed and why do some societies succeed and why do some societies fail? And it's because there's some things they do right and some things they don't do right. And I'm trying to figure that out fundamentally.
That doesn't mean that each society is working. Like, let's say Nigerian Americans are known to have high incomes and they're coming from Nigeria,
yeah.
Right? So it really, their culture is hustle, let's go. Let's do this, right? From what I've seen. So they
hustle in relation to technology, which is built off of science.
Yeah, but I'm saying that, like, when they come to America, they have the opportunity to do their thing because of, capitalism and the infrastructure's there, the money's there, where they wouldn't in their own country, right? So it's not so much the place, it is the person in the
I'd say the tradition of America is just having options and not having a tyrannical figure over, like, shooting down people like myself that enable people like me to be creative. That brings about America being what it is, and why it's so far beyond any other country on the planet. It's that freedom of expression where you can sound like a crazy person and say some crazy shit, but every once in a while you get a dude that says something relevant, and that ends up changing society for the better. So the idea is, the reason that Nigerian is able to do that is because he comes to a country where there's a greater capacity for him to express his potential in a system where like people don't shoot you down because you have a non-traditional outlook. The thing, if there is a tradition in America, is that there's a general open-mindedness to new ideas. Well, there's an open-mindedness if there's results that back up whatever the idea is being pushed forward. There has to be some kind of result. Whether the result can be skewed or not is another question. But I think we went all across the board and we barely discussed fucking.
We didn't even open up any of the studies.
Yeah, you know what? We could do that on our own, I guess. Like, because it's going to take 45 minth, an hour to even get that.
Well, let me put it this way: to anybody who's here, like, what you guys are going to essentially what both Anthony and William are going to do is kind of legitimize not everything that I'm talking about, because I'm sure they have points of disagreement, which is I'm fucking fully okay with, which is great. It's good. It's not bad to disagree. But what I will say is that they're going to invalidate a lot of the science that people see as hard science. It's not hard science. There's a difference between hard and soft science. What these guys are pushing is not hard science by any stretch. It's really, it borders on con artistry in many regards. It borders on that in terms of not. The thing is, they're actually humble when you look at the findings that are in these studies. They're actually humble by how they conclude things. But then you have other individuals who sensationalize. And what I would compare these individuals as, right? So you have a political left and you have a political right. And then you have an extreme left of blue-haired liberals or leftists on one side. And then you have alt-right conservatives on the other side. And the loudest people happen to be which people? The people on the extremes. And guess who are the people that we end up addressing most on social media? The ones that scream the loudest. I don't care so much about those people. They're going to talk all kinds of shit about me. They're going to say all sorts of different things. But at the end of the day, that chunk in the middle that's kind of like, let me hear this person out. Those are the people that make up the general population. Really, what I believe that Anthony and William are going to do is completely dissect people that are on the extreme right of the fitness political spectrum. People who are very, very conservative and say, you know what, we can't take a step forward, because if you take a step forward, your foot might get wet. And if your foot might get wet, you might fall into into a pool of water and you might drown. I think what you guys are doing is you're addressing the people on the conservative right in our industry. My concern is the people that are on the highly liberal left, who are too intuitive, that don't understand fucking what it means to have to deal with the attrition of working with clientele. I believe that both the political right and the political left don't have any practical experience in life as it relates to politics. And I believe that the left and the right of our fitness industry don't have very much practical experience. And that's why they come up with some of the craziest fucking ideas. And which, at least on the left, they do. And on the right, they defend the craziest ideas that have become somewhat established. And so on my end, the reason I had a talk with you before, Anthony, about why I can't really engage too much in the dialogue of what's in this industry. And it's because the internet just deals with extremists. You're just primarily dealing with extremists. People who are at work don't have time to deal with fucking dramas. They don't have time to deal with a bunch of bullshit that's on social media. They're like, hey, bro, I got a mortgage that I have to fucking pay for. And if I don't show up to work, then I don't pay for this mortgage. And I don't care about this drama. I don't care if you think that Naudi's a piece of shit, he's a dishonest player, or whatever it may be. I don't care. What I do care about, however, is that I need to go to work. And if I'm going to go to work, I need to have a body that's going to be able to function. And this guy seems to have a system there that's going to help me function. So the fuck with your science, I don't care. And you know what proves my position? Look at P90X and look at CrossFit. Look at both of them. And look at yoga. Was yoga a fringe idea for quite some time, guys? Yes or no? Was yoga tested in a laboratory and then implemented into society? Or was yoga implemented into society and then they decided to make bias studies to verify that yoga is actually good for people? None of which are actually fucking longitudinal, and none of which actually showcase any objective metrics to show whether that it's hurting people's mechanics or not. But was yoga a fringe idea or was it not?
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, it was super fringe.
But now the scientists are like, yeah, probiotics. That was a fringe idea, a complete nonsensical idea. Now, what are doctors doing? They're literally saying, hey, look, probiotics work so well that we're going to literally take fecal matter and put it up your butt so we can hopefully help you replenish your gut biome. That's how far this is science. And quite literally on my end, I don't have time for the way that scientists deal with the shit that they do, because they're fucking slow. And they get caught up too much in controversies, and they get caught up too much in capitalistic games. And capitalistic, let me put it, vulture capitalistic games. For me, I'm an infrastructuralist. I'm not a idealist. I'm an infrastructuralist, and I'm focusing on trying to do whatever I can to build infrastructure so that way we solve the fucking problem of people not moving well. I don't care what anybody has to say about it. I don't care about people's philosophical dispositions. I don't care about people's traditions. I don't care about any of that shit. I am a cyborg oriented around trying to solve the problems. I'm trying to make people into cyborgs. I'm sure that's probably going to sit really. I actually end up saying that in my courses. I'm like, you guys essentially have to become cyborgs that orient your decisions around things that are actually relevant to natural processes. I think that there's eventually, as a species, this is going to make me sound like a cult leader, and people are going to be like, oh my God, Naudi's a fucking cult leader. But I tend to think that our decisions are that there's a 10 commandment. There are 10 commandments that people follow within Christianity, but there are many commandments that relate to biological processes, that relate to natural law. And I believe that all of our decisions in some way, in shape or form, have to orient in accordance to natural law if we expect to ever get to a type 1 civilization. And so really what I'm trying to do is set the bedrock for a type 1 civilization, to try and understand what would a type 1 civilization is, try and actually think about. How would they process information? And so for me, I'm not a cultist because I don't have a cult. I don't have a sanctuary. I spend my time by myself most of the time, and I'm an introvert, and I don't like being around big groups of people. So don't worry about me being a cultist. What I'll say is this: is I live in America, I live in the U.S., and I'm trying to push the West as far as I can fucking push it. So then maybe at that point we can influence the East and these fucking countries that have, like, I want to push the countries that don't get. I believe that the West is orienting its values more around natural law, and that's why it succeeds. And what my objective is to try and to continue to push that imperial agenda. I'm an empiricist, right? When it all boils down to it, and I'm trying to push people into that direction. And I think that you guys here in a few minutes are about to push people into that empiricist mindset by helping them dissect information further. My goal, I'm hoping that I brought more people to your podcast because I watched episode 14 of what you guys. I listened to episode 14 and I thought it was fucking spectacular. I thought it was phenomenal. I hope that you guys continue with that agenda and you make it more common, that you address it with more context in a more specific situation, because that's how we get to a better society, by not resorting to ad hominem attacks the ways that people have done. Anthony, you and I talked before. Have I used any ad hominem attacks to shoot down any of the people? Have I characterized anybody by how they look? Have I made fun of them for anything that they can't control within themselves? Have I done anything like that?
Well, in terms of your conversations about physiotherapy and being less competent, then no ad hominems in terms of talking to the field as a whole, right? That's and for the no.
have they put ad hominems on me? How many times do they actually?
There's dedicated meme
about?
accounts.
You're
The meme cabal.
Ad hominem person I've probably ever seen.
But yeah. So with that in mind, they're not going to win, because the people that are in the middle, that know how reality works, that aren't suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect, are going to look at it and be like, those guys are just fucking crazy. You can't be that conspiratorial about an individual and expect for me to take you seriously. That's why you don't see conspiracy theorists in the White House. That's why you don't see that happening there. You had Donald Trump, who was there for a little bit and then he didn't get reelected. You can't be a conspiracy nut. We tampered with that. We played with that because the internet made conspiracies more accessible to people. But now, little by little, people are starting to actually get connected to this thing called reality. And they're like, wow, nobody is truly that evil. And nobody is really that good, right? Nobody's truly evil and nobody's truly good. On my end, I'm not concerned about either being perceived as evil or good. I just want to be perceived as useful. And I want people to take in the information that I have to help people become better. I'm not claiming that I'm a good person. I don't care. That's irrelevant to me. My perspective is, am I useful? I am? Okay, then take the information that I have to present to you and use it. And if it's not useful, then don't use it and go do whatever else it is that you're going to do. It's all good. I don't trip out. And never mind that. I believe that the people that are on the extreme left and on the extreme right are good. I think in general, most of them are good people. I think even the ones, I think they just they're operating from insecurity and they don't know how to have a good faith discussion because they haven't been checked enough by life yet. But once you get older, you begin to understand how to approach solving problems in life. Some of these guys, most of the people that are super controversial, that will institute ad hominem attacks on me, are really young. They haven't been throttled by life well enough yet. You get some older cats who exploit the younger people, who exploit them by giving them misinformation that make some money off of it. But let me put it this way. If I have an idea on how to make a car, but I have no idea how to make a car, the person that knows how to make a car is going to be the one that actually ends up winning in the end. So the cat's out of the bag. I mean, you could sit here and try and shit on me all you want, bro, but we have that. We are a community of several thousand strong now. And it's like, in order for you to convince us otherwise, you're going to have to provide some extraordinary claims. If you have extraordinary claims, you're going to have to provide some extraordinary evidence. And to actually quote my boy, Louis Ellery, if functional patterns sounds like it's making extraordinary claims, it's because you guys have dropped the bar so fucking low that it makes it look like what we're doing is actually extraordinary. Nothing that we're doing at FP is extraordinary. It's all within the confines of possibility and probability if you account for the variables well enough. And these fuckers know this, and this is why they resort to ad hominem attacks, and they don't attack me directly on the results that we get. Because if you look at the results that we get, at some point you can be like, oh, that result has this problem with it. That result has, well, wait a minute. That guy is a double amputee and he had lower back problems. Like, you're going to tell me that a person with a what are you going to do with the person's knees if they've had a double amputation from the waist down? What are you going to do with them, right? Are you going to go knee valgus or knee varus? Should you go fucking high ankle bone on a person who has a double amputation? FP is actually helping people, has helped multiple people with amputations, and we've helped people with neurodegenerative disorders. At some point, people are going to be like, all right, we get the skepticism. We get it up to a certain point. But at some point, you're going to look like that crazy fucking conspiracy nut that's wanting to shoot down this guy who clearly has a vision that you guys can't account for. So you choose what you want to do. If you want to be the crazy fucking nut and deal with the consequences of that in 5-10 years, then go ahead and do that. But at some point, you got to get a job. And when you get a job, you can't behave like that anymore. Because if you do behave like that, then your bosses at LinkedIn are going to be like, or the boss are going to look at your social media and be like, that anonymity that you get is not going to last forever. And that, by the way, how many followers do these meme accounts have? How many?
Too many.
Not enough. They don't have enough. They get thousands, right? They get that, maybe hundreds of thousands if they're lucky. They don't grow that big. I'm trying to get both of you guys. To take a step back and look at it. I listen to people, geopolitical strategists. I don't spend my time looking at the literature. I spend my time looking at history. That's what I do. And then I just apply historical context to my industry, just like historians do the same thing. And just like geopolitical strategists do the exact same thing. I want you guys to step away and look at it and be like, how big are these guys' platforms at the end of the day? Is it that big of a deal? And hopefully that'll enable you guys to not get pissed off. Anthony and Will, don't get fucking mad when these guys do this shit. It's just, it's in the grand scheme of things, this is a blip. We're going to move past it. And I think most of these fuckers are going to realize, hey, you know what? The biomechanical model matters just like the biopsychosocial model matters. They both matter. They both need to be incorporated in a protocol. They both are tools that you're supposed to use. So you can't shit on both of them. And I believe that as time passes, you're going to find more evidence to suggest that the biopsychosocial model works, because it fucking does work to an extent. It shifts asymmetry. I know, Will, you wanted to interject with something.
Well, I was just going to say the biomechanics field is already there. It's just we're like kind of the alternative biomechanics, right? The biomechanics exists within academia.
But Will, I'm not getting biomechanics.
They're going to say that they have the evidence of biomechanics, of proper biomechanics, and that's that.
Okay, they're going to have evidence, and what does that mean? Okay,
that means
what rules everything around us, William? A famous.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. Right. I hear you.
Okay, so look, the cash rules everything around us, right? Essentially, what this is all about is money. That's what it's all about. That's all it's ever been about: money and influence and power. That's what this is all about. And so, as I see it, the biomechanists don't really have power. Why? Because they don't solve a problem.
What do you think about this? If I go, I'm a policymaker, and I go, all these alternative guys are dangerous. They're not providing any science into the literature. They're making claims. They may be hurting people. They may be stopping people from moving and lifting. So we should regulate them.
I've talked to my lawyers. I've talked to my lawyers about this. We don't live in communist Russia, brother. We don't live in communist Russia.
These guys in Canada. It's getting pretty close.
Fuck. So I'm in the U.S. and that's not going to happen here. And I think that because of that, we'll be able to. We're surmounting evidence. I am seen as a specialist. When I talk to my lawyers, I'm seen as a specialist. And if somebody wants to slag on me because of my credentials or whatever the fuck it may be, that I can sue them based up. That's libel. You cannot do that to somebody. If I have results to back my claims, if I have results to back my claims and I have people that are willing to give testimony that I have helped them, and that I'm not claiming to cure anything, I'm just claiming to help people move better and to help them with their pain. I'm not claiming that. Later on down the fucking line, we can go into that route. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait before that happens. And then at that point, we'll then begin to conduct scientific studies on other factors that relate to human health. that extended deeper into things. But never mind that. If you listen to David Sinclair, he's over there talking about how he's going to have the cure for cancer and all this shit, right? I'm not even saying anything like that. I'm simply saying that FP helps you move better, and that if you move better, you're going to be out of pain. Is that a radical fucking claim? Is that radical?
I don't think it is, but there's groups that come together, okay? And licensing has happened before on, different industries, right? If somebody wanted to create a license that said you have to, let's say, publish or something like that. Hold on one second. And saying that you're kind of trying to decentralize your movement, that you're not following protocols and it could be dangerous. Like, that is where the narrative is going with your haters, I think.
Oh, you think so? But then guess what we have to do? We have to end up in a courtroom. And then if you put me in a courtroom and then actually explain my positions, I'm like, please, by all means, come to a courtroom, bro. I would love more than anything. To go into a courtroom and demonstrate what I do in front of a court. Because I've talked to my lawyers about this just because I was concerned about this many years ago. So I'm like, let's go to a fucking courtroom, and then I'll demonstrate how what we do is different, and I'll show the courtroom what's different from an active mechanical potential opposed to a passive mechanical potential. And then the people are going to be like, oh shit. You have to realize for that to happen, William, it would require an immense, it would entail so many, there'd be so many hoops that somebody would have to jump through in order to do that. And politicians in America are white. Why do you think politicians cater to corporations in America? Why?
Because they pay them and fund their campaign.
No, because average Joes don't know shit. The level of foresight that an average Joe has is very minimal. And I'm not saying that rich people know it either, because rich people are fucking stupid. People at the top are stupid and people at the bottom are stupid. That's what I'm saying. So what I'm getting at is that essentially politicians leave it up. Like, we already have a system that's working in America where you allow the free market to do what it does. And if you regulate it too much, guess what you end up doing? You end up dropping GDP. Do you think we want GDP to drop in America, or do you think we want it to go up?
Well, what about, taking out the oil industry, taking out let's say what Biden did,
Yeah. Are we taking the oil industry out right now, or are we slowly, gradually transitioning it out? And are we going to build the GDP with other renewable energies, rebuild it up with other technologies?
For sure. Okay. I
That's what I'm saying, bro. Like, I'm not worried. I don't worry. Like, that's the whole thing, guys. I don't fucking worry. Forward, right? I'm 38 years old. Do I look that bad for a 38-year-old? Do I look that bad? Considering the stress and the amount of times I've been fucking memed and the amount that people have torn into me. Do I look that bad for my age for a 38-year-old?
Of course not. Will, what are you pushing right now? How old are you right now? Well. Oh, there you go. We got 230. I'm the youngin in this situation right now.
Youngin.
How old are you?
Yeah.
I'm 31.
So look, bro, if I could just simply, I'm not giving advice. I'm just simply saying, I'm just trying to expand your horizons a little bit. Step back and look at the whole situation. It's going to be all right. You guys have a fucking duty here with this podcast. If you guys want to take it on, it's incredibly fucking important that you guys do what you're doing to prevent that fucking, if it ends up in a fucking courtroom and ends up in a goddamn courtroom, I'm not afraid. I'll just demonstrate what I do. And then the judges are going to be like, holy fuck, this guy changed that person. I'll be like, Judge, you see this person's structure? Okay, give me about an hour. Give me an hour. You see this person's structure afterwards? Hey, person, are you holding that structure on your own right now? Or is that an involuntary? Did I just fuck with your reptilian brain right now, or did I not? And the person's going to be like, you didn't. I'm just standing like this. I'll be like, Judge, I rest my fucking case. There it is. There it is. And now, physical therapist, I want you to duplicate the exact same shit that I just fucking did, right? You have to realize you can't affect a company from competing. It's like the legal system has mechanisms built into it to ensure that we still stay as a free market system. So this is where capitalism ends up becoming very, very effective. It's very useful. It's problematic in the sense that there's inherent bias, and that bias keeps you stagnated. But then it's also problematic, or that it's beneficial, problematic because of that. But then it's beneficial because then fucking guys like me get the opportunity to actually push something new onto the market, and that's why the GDP keeps going up, because you allow creators like ourselves to get up and continue to keep pushing new ideas. So with that in mind, you guys have a duty. If you guys can, bring in more people that are willing to talk about this. I'm sure my guys, Mike Musiolo and Louis Ellery, would be more than happy. My boys, Rodney Acero, would be happy to come on and talk about these things. I think pushing this narrative is going to be there. And my objective is, guys, I want to connect to the right and I want to connect to the left. And I think in the future, the next 10, 15 years, people are going to look at me and be like, damn, this guy did go through a lot of shit, But guys, I really want to unite everybody. I don't want to keep having to be this divisive force. It's not fun to be this fucking guy. It's not good. I don't get a high off of doing this. I don't like when people dislike me, man. It doesn't feel good to break rapport with people. But sometimes you have to in order to make progress within a society. So if I could recommend for you guys anything, have empathy for other people. Try and understand their position. They're under market forces, just like you are, just like I am, just like we all are, bro. We are under market forces, and we need to be fucking more empathetic with one another. But there comes a time when somebody's wanting to be completely unreasonable, and there's a time, and you can't be peaceful with them. That said, you can engage yourself like a professional. The reason I didn't is because nobody wanted to give me a platform to speak. So I kind of had to behave a little bit crazy. And I still am crazy. As I'm talking to you guys right now, I'm talking like a crazy person right now, which is why after this call, I'm going to get off the phone for about 3 weeks. And by the way, for you trolls, if you guys think you're going to come to my page and just start fucking spamming my accounts, I prepare. I have an entire team that's going to regulate that shit and make sure that you get blocked off my fucking social media platforms if you come in bad faith. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to be taking about a 3-week break because I've prepared. I think this is going to be the first vacation I've had in about 15 or like actual vacation where I didn't have my phone on me and I was working. So it's been about like 15 or 16 years since I've had a vacation. So if I look a little bit like too intense, it's because, guys, it's been intense. It's been fucking completely traumatizing. This has not been a fun experience. If I had the choice to do it all over again, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. I was suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. I would never have done this all over again. I would never do this again. I would not advise that anybody ever fucking try doing this because it will push the brink of your sanity to see all the bullshit that happens in front of you and to try and address it and to try and keep your sanity while you're sober is not the fucking easiest thing in the world. I don't take any medications. I don't do any drugs. I just eat fruit. I eat meat. I eat fucking a few root vegetables, and I fucking get outdoors and I work on my biomechanics. That's my coping mechanism throughout all of this shit. I have to somehow keep myself sane throughout all this shit. And William, I could tell, and both you fuckers, William and Anthony, I could tell you guys see what's going on. I could tell you guys see what's happening. Don't worry. It's going to work out. It's going to fucking work itself out. Try having empathy. Try having empathy, not just for people in your own community, but have empathy for other people on the other side. I put this pressure because as tough love to the physical therapist and the strength and conditioning coaches to say, hey guys, you're setting a trap for yourselves by becoming complacent. Don't be fucking complacent. Aim to excel. That's all I'm doing. I'm just upping the ante for you guys to realize that you can do much more and that your job can be so much more fucking fulfilling if you step it up a little bit. It's like that work sucks in the beginning, but if you just get that past that point of that inertia phase, life is fucking, it's tough for a while, but then at that point you begin to really appreciate what this thing is actually all about.
Well, Naudi, I wanted to publicly as well thank you for all the shit that you have taken over the years and for being integral and not choosing the easy way out, not just saying as soon as you got some of the heat from the fitness industry, from the other people, when people in the Sherdog forums were shit talking you, when basically when everyone was shitting on you, you didn't stop, you just kept going, and you didn't take the easy way out and do the easy thing. You continued and you developed your system, and the result is that you've helped a lot more people, including myself. You've been an instrumental part in changing my paradigm, even in the, like, I've only taken the 10-week course, and consumed basically every bit of social media and YouTube content of yours that I could, and you've improved the quality of my thinking, you've improved the quality of my mechanics, you've improved a lot of people's lives. So just in terms of how much you've taken on, how much you have continued to be integral to your vision and be integral to your values, despite the social pressures to kind of fuck off and go do something else, like, just a personal, for me, thank you. Like, I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys too. It's been a fucking rough ride, guys. It's been a very rough ride, bud. Every time that you hear people that have been through really difficult circumstances, that's what makes it all worth it. To everybody who's kind of been there, who's gone through those tough circumstances, who sent me those emails, who have sent me those messages that were like, dude, fucking keep going. I was in a really fucked up spot, and if it wasn't for what you had to offer, I'd be in a really tough. They were in a tough spot, and I helped them to come out of a tough spot. I don't do this for haters. I don't care about haters. The haters are not my motivators. I don't fucking care about that. There's no fucking, the only high that's better than keep this in mind, guys. The reason I get emotional about it is it's probably biologically because I'm really just securing my own survival in life because people value me. So I try not to see myself as a good person. So this is probably all self-serving at the end of the day. It's probably all self-serving. So it's not like I care and Naudi's a good fucking dude. I'm not. So it's just like there's like an emotion that fucking comes when somebody's been in a really fucked up circumstance. Because I've been in really, really difficult circumstances in my life, and I don't want to get into that, but I've been through very tough circumstances in my life, clearly. And when you can lift that burden off of somebody's shoulders, it's hard to fucking get high. It's hard to get high on anything else when you fucking been able to do that for yourself. For one, when you could do it for yourself, but then when you can duplicate that for other people, god damn, dude. If I do this, I just so everybody who's watching, who's experienced this, I do this for you motherfuckers. This is why I do it. The reason I get up is because of that, bro. That's really it. So it's not even like, oh, I found it within myself. I saw that there was a need for something. I saw that there was fucking patch it. There was holes that needed to be patched up in the system, and I just fulfilled what I could with what I know. At some point, guys, I can't. This is why I can't do fucking podcasts, because it's hard not to get emotional. And I think as time passes, people are going to recognize a lot more of what we've done and what we're doing, and it's going to be fucking really difficult to get in front of people and not get like overly emotional. It's why I can't even do HBS courses either, because it's like this happens every fucking course, man. I just like you visualize all the pain that fucking comes in with it, man, and everything that you go through to try and solve a problem, and it's hard not to get emotional. There's a lot of I need to be able to step away from this for a while so I don't get emotional about this shit before I become a public figure, because I don't want to be looking like a fucking mess on this camera with you guys right now. I hate this shit. It's not the man in me, the manliness in me doesn't want to emote, like, and I think it's for a reason, and I think it's for the better. And so that's why I need to take a step away from, like, maybe I come back in the future or some shit like that, and I become some kind of a public figure. But right now I'm not in that place. I don't think I'm not even a physical representation of what the fuck FP is about, man. I still have to make so many changes about myself. Like I still look like a little kid. Like, really, my face is still very fucking childlike, and I don't like that. I need to look more like a man, and I think it's because I think I have mental aspects of me that are very man-like, but then my physical attributes just never fucking caught up, man. And I need time to get away from this shit. And so that's really what this trip is about, man. It's been a long fucking 15, 16 years. It's been horrifying, to be completely honest. And for all the horror that fucking came with it, it's been worth it. I think it's been worth it. I think in the end, it'll all be worth it. I think that the world will be better off because of it. I think I'll be better off, and I think people in general will be better off because of it. So I appreciate you guys having me on. And fuck, I was hoping this was not going to happen. And so here we are. Now it's fucking recorded. Great. Well, yeah. To anybody who's out there, dude, it's like if anybody tells you that you can do anything that you want, that's not true. That you can't do anything that you put your mind to, right? But if you develop enough skills and attributes to be able to become individual, and you can discern information effectively, you can do a fucking hell of a lot. You can't accomplish anything you want. You can't achieve your wildest fucking dreams, but you can do a hell of a lot. A fucking impact. And if anybody ever told you that you can't, or that you're limited, or whatever the fuck, don't take it as a matter of fact. They have their limitations, and you can't allow other people's limitations to limit your own perspectives on life. You can't let another person's lack of capability limit your own personal reality. You can't do that. You have to assume that sometimes it's just something that they're lacking within themselves. So if you have something fucked up with your body, if something wrong with your body or whatever, when there's a will and we have science, real science, there's nothing we can't solve, literally. So I guess I'll probably leave it off at that, guys.
Well, Naudi, thank you so much for joining us on The Art of Move. This has been an incredible conversation. We're on the same side, and we're trying to expand and grow the conversation. So we really appreciate you.
They're on the same side too, bro. We're all on the same side.
We're all on the same side.
At the end of the day, we have to have empathy for one another, man. When it's all said and done, when saner minds prevail, they're on your side too. At the end of the day, we need each other. We need each other for accountability. So don't look at them as your fucking enemy. Look at them as the system that's checking you to make sure that you're not fucking full of shit.
And this is 100%. The intention of this is to find the grand unified theory of human movement and biomechanics. But ultimately, anyone who's listening, we really hope that we're helping you improve the quality of your thinking. We're helping you think more critically about movement and about your biomechanics. We're helping you find better quality answers and asking better quality questions. And now, you've been doing that for me for several years, and I'm sure for all the people listening, you've done the same for them. You've made a tremendous impact in so many of our lives. So it means the world that you right before your well-earned vacation, you decided to hop on with us. It really, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on. This was episode 67 of The Art of Move. And Will, we're going to have to do a follow-up, man, because we didn't even get into some of those. So the next episode, Will and I are going to go dive into some of the actual,
if anything, how about you guys reach out to my boys, Mike Musiolo and Louis Ellery, and see if you can get them onto your podcast to have a discussion, because they'll actually be able to get into the details. That's not my. I'm good at being able to look at variables and tell you where something will succeed and fail. They're both fucking ridiculous. Those guys are both snipers. In my community, I don't bring anybody on board. I don't have anybody to represent me. If you can't do, you're not allowed to teach in my community. And so at the end of the day, I put them in that position because they're fucking snipers. They're really good. So I think it would be good for you guys to bring them on and have a discussion with them on that. I think I'm kind of I'm going to tap out probably for a while, man, because it's too much pressure, and it's too much pressure for too long. And I'm an introvert, and this is not my domain is not being a public speaker at this point, man. So I know my role, and I got to do my own thing. But you guys can have a talk with them, and they'll discuss everything that they've found with you guys.
100%. Well, thank you again. For those who are watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and tell us what you thought about the episode. If you have questions that you want us to address for future episodes, other guests, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, please leave us a review and subscribe. It really, really helps our visibility. You can follow me at The Body Moves on Instagram. You can follow Will at The Art of Move. Naudi has multiple accounts, so you can follow at Naudi Aguilar and at Functional Patterns if you want to learn more about his work. And there's also functionalpatterns.com, where you can take the online courses, look at the human biomechanics specialist registration pages, and kind of learn more about their work. Thank you so much for listening, guys. This was episode 67 of The Art of Move. Thank you, Naudi. This was amazing. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
You guys take care. Appreciate the time. Take care.